Republicans. No, that just really ain't been the case. But I think that the problem that, we live in such a toxic environment, I don't see anyone getting us out of that because we like to slither, I like to say slither around in the cesspool of politics. And so we don't encourage our politicians to be better. Twitter, social media is such a space now, and it influences how these politicians even engage with their own constituents. These shows and all of these things that they get, it is ultimately ridiculous. But I think what's going to end up happening, because you mentioned the vice presidential picks, JD Vance, because I said the both of them are base picks. These are picks for the base. And I think what's going to end up happening, fortunately for me as a Republican, that's why I said that I breathed a sigh of relief when I found out that it would be Walz, because I said to myself, Walz is much less likely to take Pennsylvania than a Shapiro would have.
Super Thick, which is what I am now, coming off season, and this is Warrior Thirst. This is the pre-workout, and this is the creatine for a stacker. So I stack these together, pre-workout, to power me through that angry workout, because y'all know I'm angry. Follow me, Angel_Dimon on Instagram.
Welcome back to the CVMK Show, because it is what it is. I'm your host, Mr. CVMK himself. Look, thank you all. You all have built this thing. We're only doing it because of you. You guys make it what it is. The reason why we're still able to put out content is because of subscribers, fans, followers like you. So I need you to do this. I need you to spread the word. I need you to go to YouTube, hit the click, like, shares button. It's a little bell. Just subscribe. Bing. If you listen on Spotify, listen to it, share it. And always follow the business page at CVMK_global, where obviously the fitness elements are. But if you just want the podcast related content only, it is what it is _show. We have an amazing episode because we're in the political season. So we got to talk politics. And even though as divisive as it is, as much of a turnoff as it is necessary. And there's a lot of just foolishness in the atmosphere. So I brought back, I asked him, he's like, yo, I'll jump on. He's blowing up big time. You've seen him on Newsmax, CNN. He's past just Roland Martin. He is shifted into the stratosphere. I'm happy for this brother, man. And we're going to talk about politics today because I'm going to be honest with you. This is not 2020 and I don't know what to do. We'll be back with Melik Abdul after a quick word from our sponsors. Melik, how you doing, man?
You give me way too much credit. I appreciate it, though. I appreciate the love.
Oh, bro, no problem, man. Look, I tell you, got to give people their flowers, man, because one day I do believe, when it turns and everything is rocking and now you can't reach people and they have EAs and they got personal assistants and it's like, you got
to go through an agent.
Yeah, you got to go through an agent, man, because I've reached out to some of these people. He's like, well, I need you to fill out this form, talk to my agent, let's talk price. And I'm like, you know what, never mind. Maybe next year.
Yep.
So I appreciate you being on here, man. Look, I want to start here. Our presidential electoral season is here. Everybody knows Super Tuesday in November, we're going to decide for a new president. Usually the traditional makeup, you got one side, you got the other. They differ, personalities differ, but for the most part, they're pretty much the same. America's always kind of been like this, right? Now we have extremism. And we got extreme right, and we got extreme left. And if you're like me, you're like, both of this is a turnoff. So let's start here because people read left to right. Let's go left to right. The left. I think most people can honestly say it's a good thing. Joe should not have ran. President Biden should not have ran for second term. He mentally, physically could not do the job anymore. I don't think there's any controversy in that statement. I don't think there's controversy on his vice president taking up the helm and kind of going for this campaign. The controversy is there has been no real vision set forth by them. I've heard I'm with her. I've heard we got your back. I've heard a lot of great colloquialisms and anecdotal phrases, but nobody has said, we're going to invest this amount into this space. We're going to create these amount of jobs. We're going to end these wars. We need to focus on the green. Like, there's not an actual detailed plan. There's a lot of twerking. I see the Meg Thee Stallion stuff, and there's a lot of entertainment, but there's no substance. I think that's safe to say, right? As a political novice like myself, what is going wrong with the left or the Democratic side of the strategy?
Well, I'll just want to say I should have started off just talk about how disappointed I was that Noah won the bronze. He came in third in the men's 200. So that I was bummed. I had to pump up myself coming on the show because I wanted Noah to win. Noah Lyles. I'm talking about the Olympics, of course. But so the problem that I think Democrats have is that in 2020, you had many people who voted for Joe Biden who were not in love with Joe Biden. The reason that we know that people weren't in love with Joe Biden is that people weren't upset when Joe Biden got out of the race. So there was no, oh my goodness, I can't believe that, Joe Biden is leaving the race. So that's one element. Another problem is that because part of the reason, if you go and read the New York Times and many of the other publications, one of the reasons that, of a number of reasons, but one of the reasons that Joe Biden was reluctant to get out of the race is that he wasn't confident Kamala Harris could win. At the same time, there were people within the Democratic establishment, meaning the leadership within the Democratic Party, who also had concerns about that very same thing, and that she purposely did not distinguish herself or take strong positions on anything. So you have that now as the Democratic nominee. If you ask people where has she distinguished herself as vice president, they will in part rightly say, well, she's the vice president. She's not the principal. So therefore, she's more in an advisory capacity. All of that stuff is true. However, you still cannot say that she has distinguished herself in any way beyond the traditional, I would say, choice. So she's been very big going around the country when it comes to choice. All of these type of cultural issues, these type of social issues, she's been very strong on that. But so she goes into this with a deficit. And that's where we are with the campaign. And as someone who I often like to remind people, because they say, oh, well, you're just a Republican, who go listen to him. I remember what I felt back in 2008, 2007, when I was pretty new, to national politics. I had, dabbled around in local politics. But in 2007, there was this young whippersnapper named Barack Hussein Obama, who said that he was going to run for president. And I was on board on day one. I was with him on day one. There was a much different expectation that we had of Barack Obama. And so to your point about not having any policies, or essentially what you're saying is that we ain't asking for nothing. Well, we should have, and of course, I'm in a different place now politically, but we should have learned with Barack Obama to not do this all over again. And now we are caught up in the history, and I would also say much of this is about dislike of Donald Trump as well. So anybody but Donald Trump, but we are so caught up in this moment that we don't care that it's now been, I believe, 18 days and the current Democratic nominee for president of the United States has not given one sit-down interview. She likely will not give an interview before the convention. And if it goes as planned, where Donald Trump says that he's going to show up to the Fox News debate on September 4th, which will end up being a town hall because Kamala Harris won't be there. And then if Kamala Harris goes to the ABC debate on September 10th, because Donald Trump says he won't be there, then that will be a town hall. We likely will not see Kamala Harris sit down for an interview before September 10th. So that means that she would have been in the race even longer and not have to articulate any policy. I will say this before
Sure.
She will, right before the convention, release a platform. I know people are talking about that now, that her platform is empty. I doubt very seriously that she will go into the convention without releasing a platform. That's what they're working on now.
I totally agree. Look, this is not the Judge Joe Brown show. I think that was scandalous. Not, I personally, she's competent. She's intelligent. She's educated. She's an AKA. Shout out to the AKAs. Every bit of a black woman. There's nothing to defend, to debate. Those talking points is the base, right? Is a baser, darker fringe element that is not waning. The truth of the matter is, like you said, this feels a lot like Fast and the Furious 10 or 7 or 8 or 5 or anyone but the first one, really. And and we're just creating a sequel. And it's like everybody got excited. It's like, oh, yeah. But nothing's been demanded. Nothing has been even articulated. I said I was shocked that she didn't pick Shapiro. I'm like, Governor Shapiro, East Coast, you need the swing state in Pennsylvania. And to get Tim Walz is like, okay, and you double down on what you already had. It's like their version of JD Vance, right? That's what's bothering, I think, really people that are really in tune, people that really are committed to the democratization of the United States and to democracy as a whole. You don't have fungible, real programming and agendas that is speaking to the issues of America. When Americans go to the grocery store, they don't care how you identify. And it's like you're making this your platform. But what you're saying is, I don't care about inflation. You know what I'm saying? Like, and you got to hear it. And it sounds so tone deaf. And here's my pushback. You're not even showing up in Chicago for the DNC. It's a virtual thing, right? So it's like, as a Chicagoan, I'm like, at least do the hard work and participate in the process. Now it makes me think, not to be a conspiracist or any of that, but now it makes me question who's really pushing this agenda. So when you hear Marianne Williamson come out and say there needs to be an open convention, and then she gets shut down. And I'm not saying like I'm the biggest Marianne Williamson fan, but really, you were kind of pushed in position. Now we can argue either way. It would have happened if it was the other side. I'm not arguing how this has gone about. But my concern is we're voting now personality over policy. And to the point that now you no longer need policy. And when you look at it, it's like, I don't know. You just don't have me sold. So I want to go here. Love, when she's in Atlanta and she has the twerk fest going on. As an adult, I'm gonna be honest with you. Love Meg. No diss. My wife knows I love Meg, so it's not like I gotta explain that question. But as a voter, that was a turnoff. As I'm looking, I'm trying to hear. I'm like, well, maybe. And then I see this and hotties for Harris, and I'm just like, yeah, probably not the step in the right direction. Do you believe that they are trying to give you culture because there is no curriculum?
Yes, absolutely believe that. In fact, I need to write that down because I'm going to steal that from you.
You got it.
Right there. But if you go back to, let's say, even in January, the Democrats, at least that inner circle around Joe Biden, knew about his diminished capacity. Kamala Harris knew about his diminished capacity. They decided, the Democratic Party in concert with the DNC, decided to change the primary rules to give Joe Biden an advantage in South Carolina. South Carolina being the largest, the first state with a larger minority population. And so they decided to bypass Iowa. They decided to bypass New Hampshire to start with South Carolina. So they knew then about Joe Biden's diminished capacity. And Kamala Harris was there. Now she'll have to answer for a lot of that. That her being vice president of the United States makes her qualified to be president of the United States, because there's only two who will serve in that role. And so I don't think that her qualifications or anything like that should be questioned, but her not being able to distinguish herself as vice president. And that's not just what the Trump campaign they will be focusing on. But if you listen to Kamala Harris herself, a lot of what she talks about is her time as Attorney General. And I think that was about 8 or so years ago. And it's warranted, because she'll equally be criticized for her time as Attorney General. But there's a reason that you don't hear her talking about what she's done as vice president. She talks about how she supported the president with this or that. I don't think that Kamala Harris will have any policies that are different from standard Democrat policies. I think both Kamala Harris chose and Donald Trump chose two people that are for the base of the Democratic Party. I don't think that Walz helps with more moderates in the Democratic Party than JD Vance helps Trump with more moderates in the Republican Party. This was more about optics and to shore up the base. So I think that for as long as Kamala Harris can go without there being mad pressure for her to do an interview, because look at the people who are asking for interviews. Well, it ain't no black folk who are saying that she needs to sit down for an interview. So she's going to use the Megan Thee Stallions. I would not be surprised if a Beyonce or Taylor Swift don't show up at some point. She's going to capitalize on all of that in the very same way that Barack Obama did. And because we only have about 3 months until election, she's going to coast up until then, because she did have to go through a primary. So within a very short period of time, Republicans will have the opportunity to run against someone who literally had the race just drop in her lap. She didn't have to compete for a single vote. Therefore, no one knows what her policies are. So she didn't have to go on the campaign trail talking about her policies. And I'm not convinced that we're going to get anything beyond what you'll see and when she launches her platform, which is why I say I think it'll be before the convention. It will have all of the policies there on education and all of these various things. But those things will be standard Democratic policies. I don't think that she will be even with the choice of Shapiro, where there was some criticism of Shapiro. I don't think that she's going to be any more aggressive when it comes to reining in Netanyahu than Joe Biden would.
No. I want to go to this before we go to a break. Are we witnessing 2016, the remix? And what I mean by that, like when Secretary Clinton was running, and she took her foot off the gas. Now they said, she's dealing with health challenges and whatnot, but kind of, took her foot off the gas. And you wake up November 5th and it's like, oh, that's kind of what happens, right? And then all of a sudden, bam. It feels like, we're doing all this, and then we're about to get to the end of the movie, and then the twist is going to happen. Like, yeah, not only, did you not win, you lost also this state. Are we setting ourselves, or, depending on obviously the ideology you side with, is this the remix of 2016?
Man, I swear. I have said this time and time again that this reminds me of 2016.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because of the level of confidence that Democrats have that there is no way Donald Trump could beat Hillary Clinton. It is this carnival barker. Are you kidding me? This reality star can beat the Hillary Clinton. And I think that same type of confidence or overconfidence they have now, where they are dismissing despite the fact that Donald Trump had 4 different indictments, one of it, 34 different counts. He's now a convicted felon. This has been at least going back into 2023 was when the first case dropped against Donald Trump. And even to this point, he is competitive. And in some places now it's showing Kamala Harris leading, but he's competitive with Kamala Harris and was beating Joe Biden. If you are willing to ignore that and just assume, oh, but that's just MAGA, this guy, those indictments, 90 something counts. Like, are you kidding me? Like, this is the guy who's convicted. He's a convicted felon with 34 different counts, and he's still competitive. People still trust him on the economy. People still trust him on immigration. So I think that they need to do some soul searching early on, because, pull back some of this confidence that Kamala Harris will absolutely beat Donald Trump, even in a debate.
I like it. We're going to go to DT after a quick word from our sponsors.
There's a hero in all of us waiting to be unleashed. All it takes is just that one last push. Activate the hero within with CVMK Global Supplements. All natural, steroid-free, designed to enhance performance, build muscle, and increase energy. You are unstoppable. You can do this. Become your own hero at www.cvmkglobal.store.
Oh, we just dropped V-Way Vanilla Way ice cream flavor, y'all. If you're a vanilla guy, this is the protein for you. I'm telling you, 25 grams of protein, 110 calories, digestive enzymes, no bloat. Absolutely amazing. Go to www.cvmkglobal.store. Get it today. Matter of fact, if you send me a DM, I will send you a discount code for 25% off. That's how much I believe in the product. That's how much I want you to have at www.cvmkglobal.store. So, DT, John Trump is an interesting person. I think that's the best way to say it. Now, I'm going to give him his flowers while yet still critiquing, because I don't like bashing on anybody, right? But I do like speaking truth. He was the president of the United States, and he deserves the respect as a president. And I don't care how you feel about it. He's a president, once a president, always a president, right? I don't like people joking about assassinations. I don't even think that's funny in any context. You can talk about the situation, you can talk about the variables, you can talk about but that's what makes assassination an assassination. If you look, it's so morbid and so dark, and even if there's some truth to whatever you're trying to aim at, what does it solve at the end of the day, right? My hope was that DT, I wasn't expecting. I saw the light, Apostle Paul on the road to Damascus, but what I was expecting is that, man, wake up and realize I can do this thing, and I'm gonna do it, and I'm gonna shock them, right? And then I was kind of hoping, I was like, okay, yeah, this happened. Tim Scott's gonna be vice, and it's gonna be a party, and that's what I was kind of hoping. I was really pushing, like, DT, I just need you to change, man. Just repent, like, just something different. And he doubled down with JD, which to me, like you said, doesn't sway. He already had that. He just doubled down on it. And we're getting a DT that is also older. And people don't want to admit he's also older. There's a little slippage. He's not the same DT in 2016. He's still fiery, but he's not as quick, right? And there is something there that he's really missing the opportunity to be great, right? And I think it's revenge. And I get it. I mean, whether you agree with, a lot of people came after him. You can say he caused it himself, but I feel like he's being swallowed by his own pride, right? Instead of allowing himself to really be the change agent that he could be and go down as the greatest president if he really turned things around. Why hasn't Donald Trump really pushed the Republicans into a new space that they'd be virtually undefeatable if they just shifted some things. Why is he's their help and he's their Achilles heel at the same time? What's going on here?
Oh, so what you're describing is a bit of narcissism, is a bit of ego, is a bit of pride. I don't think that for Donald Trump this is about revenge. I think this is Donald Trump's personality. And at his age, almost 80 years old, that is and as someone, he's a New Yorker, he's been wealthy all of his life, run a business, billionaire, flies around on his own plane, has been, ran his own stuff. He's been the boss for years. All of that factors into who Donald Trump is as president of the United States. These are things Donald Trump refuses to do. Donald Trump can adjust. He just chooses not to, because I think that they're not just he surrounds himself by people who feed into his worst instincts. Donald Trump has bad instincts, and he just doesn't. He's been advised time and time again. And I know you saw at the debate where he had said, well, I'm not supposed to say his name, but I'm going to say it anyway. Biden. Well, yes, because they had already put out there before, let everybody know that Joe Biden was not going to be mentioned in Donald Trump's speech. Well, he just said it anyway. The things when he goes off script, all of the things that gets him in trouble are not the things that are in the teleprompter. It is when Donald Trump decides to go on a 20-minute rant, like when he was down in Georgia just a couple of days ago, decided to go and criticize Brian Kemp. Brian Kemp ain't said nothing about that man.
Right.
Hey, nothing about Donald Trump. Donald Trump off teleprompter then decides to go after Brian Kemp, and you heard people in there booing, not Kemp, it was Donald Trump, because he gets in his own way. And a very good example of that is in 2020, when I always tell people that race is, the people didn't vote for Joe Biden, they voted against Donald Trump. Because what do they remember about Donald Trump? They remember that in the early days of COVID, as we were facing a global pandemic, Donald Trump decided to spend an inordinate amount of time, the majority of press conferences, fighting with the Jim Acosta, fighting with the April Ryan, fighting with this reporter. It will be an hour into the press conference before you even heard what the medical team, what the COVID response team was doing to address it, because he was this was about him. It wasn't what the federal government was doing. It was what Donald Trump was doing. And what people saw at that point is that he is not being a strong leader. It does not matter how bad the other side may be. At the end of the day, people have to at least like you. And Donald Trump confuses that, because I think, again, part of that background, well, I'm powerful, I've got money, I've been able to, throw my weight around. That's not the case when we're talking about a vote. You don't, unless you bind somebody's vote, you don't dictate anyone's vote. So they have to at least like you. And we have seen over and over again that in places all around the country, people continue to be reelected who shouldn't even be in office, but because they like them. Donald Trump made himself unlikable in 2020, and they ended up voting for Joe Biden. Donald Trump can once again make himself unlikable in 2024 and lose this race to Kamala Harris. It is Donald Trump's race to lose, and he could easily do that by just being Donald Trump.
He can. Look, I said this. Is it too late to replace a vice? I said this is a couple things he needs to do. Replace JD, call Tim, call Haley, call Vivek, call Governor Kasich, call Huckabee. There's a call Romney. There's a lot of there's so many names that are not gonna say no. Like, you cannot tell me if Tim Scott gets a call today, say, hey, look, I made a mistake. That little voice, and he's like, I want you to be vice. Tim is going, so I think what's happening is that both sides are making strategic mistakes, and they don't even see it as such. That's the wild part. You don't even see that this car is heading off a road, heading off, driving off a cliff. So I want to go to what to expect regardless of who wins. And because everybody's making a deal prior to 2025. And you posted something on social media, and I happen to agree with you. Most, like you said, 75% in prior to 2025 is really the conservative agenda that's always been known. You have, 20 to 30% or 25% that is really extreme out there that most people don't agree with, even conservatives themselves, and be like, hey, this part you could throw out, but nobody gets their full agenda passed, right? But yeah, it's a manifesto that is, you need to look at, you need to read. It's got a lot of terrible things in it. I don't even think that's a debate. So when the left says it's got terrible things in it, it's like, well, yeah, we know. I think the challenge is what can be done, what needs to be done. There are certain things, like I'm not for the destruction of the public school system. However, on the other end, I think the public school system is a joke. And it's like, can two things be true? Are you going to do what it takes to really revamp this? And I'm not seeing, somebody brought this up. It was like, well, you live in Chicago. I mean, are your kids going to CPS? And I'm like, well, if I had kids, they wouldn't be going to CPS. They'd probably be in private school, right? So I can't at the same time say 2025 is a joke and then actually subconsciously enact what 2025 is going about. So I think that's one thing. The other thing is, as the scripture says, where there's no vision, my people perish. I'm not really seeing anybody talk about how America goes forward. Not either or, not Robert F. Kennedy Jr., not Cornel West, or whoever else, Jill Stein, whoever else decides to, get a couple votes. That's what sucks. And I think you need a space. We need to be able to debate these individuals. Because I want to say this. If Donald wins, what really is going to happen to the United States? Because I've been thinking about this. I'm like, I looked at 2016 and 2020. And then I compared 2020 to 2024. And I realized Illinois was still Illinois. Gas was still high. Gas was cheaper under Trump, but so was groceries and a few other things and rent and all the things you need to live. But the messaging got better. But everything else got crappier and worse. And this end of democracy or this, apocalyptic, clash, I don't see happening in either case, at least not now. Am I wrong? Or literally one side gets in, it's the end and whatever happens.
It's hyperbole, a function of our toxic culture, the idea that, and this has happened over and over again. I'll remind people when I was a Democrat, what I said then is that electing a Republican, I didn't vote for a Republican until Donald Trump. That was the first time I ever voted for a Republican. But even then, just because of my environment, it was always the case that voting for a Republican is a threat to you, and especially to you as a little black man. A young black man. That was always the case. John Lewis said a similar thing about John McCain when he was running with Sarah Palin in 2008. He compared them to George Wallace standing in the schoolhouse door. I don't know if you remember. I'm sure you remember in 2012 when Joe Biden it wasn't the NAACP, but it was some convention where Joe Biden said that the Republicans wanted to put us back in chains.
Yeah, I remember.
So this type of gloom and doom scenario, if a Republican is elected, is something that we've heard over and over again. Donald Trump has just become like the face of that, but people act as if we haven't had these come. I don't know at any point, at least in my voting history, where someone has said, you know what, I rock with like people who are definitely on the left, or maybe I rock with Republicans. No, that just really ain't been the case. But I think that the problem that, we live in such a toxic environment, I don't see anyone getting us out of that, because we like to slither around in the cesspool of politics. And so we don't encourage our politicians to be better. Twitter, social media is such a space now, and it influences how these politicians even engage with their own constituents. These shows and all of these things that they get, it is ultimately ridiculous. But I think what's going to end up happening, because you mentioned the vice presidential picks, JD Vance, because I said both of them are base picks. These are picks for the base. And I think what's going to end up happening, fortunately for me as a Republican, that's why I said that I breathed a sigh of relief when I found out that it would be Walz, because I said to myself, Walz is much less likely to take Pennsylvania than a Shapiro would have. So this wasn't because of Kamala Harris needed someone to win the electoral map, because I honestly don't think that a JD Vance and a Tim Walz will be any better in those Rust Belt states, like one or the other. I think they're going to balance each other out. So what's going to matter is at the top of the ticket with Kamala and Donald Trump. But I don't, that is, they're not bringing experience to the ticket at all. I'm a big Tim Scott fan. So I thought that strategically, in order to build an electoral map, to bring more people in other words, to do no harm, that you would have obviously gone with a Tim Scott, but that wasn't the direction that he decided to go. So much like Kamala Harris decided to double down as far as the base of the party, I'm not sure if Tim Walz, if some of his positions, I know he got a lot of criticisms around the Black Lives Matter protests, but some of these positions about gender affirming care, I understand that is a huge issue, an important issue for the base of the Democratic Party. But is that a Rust Belt? Like, can you run on that in the Rust Belt? I'm just not necessarily sure.
Can't run on it in a Pentecostal church. Like, we be like, So that's why I said, I was like, Tim Walz does what? I thought, I was like, look, I would have respected a Newsom. And granted, like I said, I'm not a liberal, but I would have respected a Newsom because at least you're both Californians. Like, I saw that coming. But when Tim was picked, I was like, and they try to lose, so I want to shift as soon as we cut to commercial break. I want to talk about, media, like more than social media, but really the changing of the tide. And this is going to get a little interesting because, I've been thinking about it. And I've been thinking about it a long time. I've been like, I've been watching the news. My grandparents watched it. They particularly watched it before church. It was annoying as a kid. Older I get, I watch it. And I realized the same people are on there. And I was like, how much gatekeeping is it really at the top? Because, and you mentioned it, as a black man trying to break into that space, I want to go there. I want to know because I think there's room enough at the table for all of us. And some folk, need to rotate. So after a quick word from our sponsor.
I literally just tried the best pre-workout on the planet. With Superpower pre-workout, you have increased focus and a power boost every single time you work out. It's not only packed with 225 milligrams of caffeine, but it also has citrulline and creatine. It's insane how much energy and focus I had during my workouts. If you're ready to take your workouts to the next level, then ditch your current pre-workout and get the Superpower pre-workout to be your own hero.
www.cvmkglobal.store. I'm telling you, it's going down. Follow us on all social media platforms, CVMK Global, CVMK. If you put in CVMK, you'll see the white bear. Follow us, connect with us, like, share, subscribe. We look forward to engaging with you. Gatekeeping is a real thing. To the point that it's not a disrespect to those that have established such a brand, but it seems a little funny. I've been meeting with a lot of marketing agencies recently. How do we get the brand? How do we create exposure? How do we get more traffic to the website? These are always the conversations. You can do this, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this, but you need to do this. You got to put this product in this many hands. You got to do this, you got to do this. I mean, there's a lot of stuff, right? But one of the biggest things they tell me is that you'd rather have 1,000 micro influencers than one major influencer. And I thought that was the most profound thing I heard today. I was like, man, that makes a lot of sense. And then the lady says, the reason why you want that is because most people need to hear about it and trust the source. The only thing a major influencer can do is confirm what the others are already saying. Mm-hmm. So I've been thinking, in news, in media as a whole, but definitely in news, I feel like there aren't newer faces. Like when I watched the first debate, and I saw Wolf, saw Anderson, saw Van, saw Abby, saw Alyssa, and I'm like, Alyssa's probably the youngest one up there. Alyssa and Abby, but everybody else, my God, he was in Obama's camp. Can't even think of his name right now. But like everybody else, it's like these figures from yesteryear, and it's like you guys are really controlling the narrative. Like you really have that much of a stronghold. How come we have not seen new talent in this space?
So the talent is out there. A lot of this really is network decisions.
Okay.
So a lot of people, most of the ones that you see get these contributorship deals. So just so people know, most people who you see, whether that is on a CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, News Nation, Newsmax, most of the people who you see, throughout the day are not paid contributors at these networks. They're people like me who just go on because, for the exposure. So they're able to, and because there's so many of us out here who want a contributorship deal, of course, who would want a Fox News or a CNN gig? Because there's so many of us, there's a pool of talent to choose from. So the people who normally get these contributorship deals, these paid deals, typically either have some affiliation with it, worked in an administration, worked on a political campaign, and these things are built over years. There are people that I know who, a buddy of mine, he's regularly on Fox News, and he's been a regular on Fox News for about 7 years now. And he's had multiple conversations with them about a contributorship deal, and they won't bite. This is the case not just on Fox. People should know this is the case across media. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine. He's like, oh, I like what you say. I wish, we heard more of you. You get on some of the more major networks. And so I asked him, I said, well, let me ask you, I said, if you had to, for major networks like MSNBC, CNN, like if you had to identify a Black male Republican and Trump supporter, who would that be? And he said, I don't know. He said, what's the young guy name on CNN? And I said, I already know who you're talking about. He said, I can't think. I said, you're talking about Shermichael. And I said, yeah. Right. I said, well, I'll give you Shermichael. But beyond Shermichael, and Shermichael is not a Trump supporter. Shermichael made the announcement some years back in 2020 that he was leaving the Republican Party. So I think he may have come back into the fold, but just a strong, Republican who Black male, they just don't exist because media is either you come in through an administration or you come in because you trended, because you said some. So for instance, how, for a time you could get Candace Owens' book because she was willing to say certain things. Media, it's like you have to trend. You have to either say something controversial. I'm sure you've seen many people, you say to yourself, how did you get on TV and not me? Like, I don't even understand. Like but they're chasing after a story, and these are network decisions. So as far as Black men especially, and I would also, and I don't mean it in or any type of crass way, I would even argue Black heterosexual men across network media is not a thing. They don't get the gigs. I'll say that.
No, you're right. And like you said, and not to be defamatory, we're just speaking facts. If you are a Black male, a straight Black heterosexual male, you don't get looked at. We're kind of like dinosaurs. It's like they did exist. We still do, so it's like, it's a truth that nobody wants to have, so I was on the 100 Black men over here. Somebody sent me a link. So I was like, let's be nosy. I'm gonna jump on, I want to listen, right? I want to see, maybe they can convince me. And I didn't hear one iota. And we had a lot of people that jumped on. We had Governor Westmore. We had, there's a lot of people that was on that call, but it wasn't nothing that spoke to me because like this doesn't represent any of my values or any, so it is one of those things that you have to be like, they don't really care on both sides, right? It's not just a either or. It's a they don't really care. The disappointing thing is, and this is where I think, and I talked about like owning the space, is that we don't have a network strong enough to fill that gap, right? The Griot didn't work, that imploded. BT, only exists within fragments, and I can't tell. I don't know if it's Paramount or it's TP Studios. I don't know. They're like a shared weird living space right now. You don't really have that base, but when I turn on the MSNBCs of the world, outside of Reverend Al, it's like, and I guess what's wild for me is that, and no diss, I love Reverend Sharpton, but it's like, okay, I watch Morning Joe, but I'm not seeing any headway for really any younger talent. It's like, hey, no, like Reverend Al, you almost 70, dog. Like, no, and like I said, no shot, but it's like, when are you, I don't know. This conversation needs to happen. What if, and I'll go back to this point, November 5th happens. Let's say Harris and Walz win. What does the United States get?
I think they got the same thing that they got with Joe Biden. I don't think there's nothing going to be different. She's not going to, because Kamala Harris and neither Kamala Harris nor Walz are bringing any foreign policy chops to the ticket. That means that they'll be surrounded by a team of advisors, the Susan Rices and others just within the Democratic, establishment, who will be guiding her foreign policy too. I mean, we talk about she hasn't sat for an interview. Well, if someone were to ask Kamala Harris, well, what is your foreign policy worldview? They don't know. They wouldn't be able to articulate what her foreign policy worldview is. So she's going to be pretty much she's ultimately going to make the decision, but her advisors are going to be the ones around her who are guiding her in this direction. So we already know, I think the latest numbers, about 39 Palestinians have been killed. I think another 60 or so thousand have been injured. She's not going to pursue a policy different from the policy of Joe Biden. Now, to all their credit, neither will Donald Trump pursue a different policy, because we're talking about Israel and our relationship with Israel, AIPAC. We just saw what happened with Cori Bush. We saw what happened with Jamal Bowman. We know the power of lobbyists, a lobbying organization, and AIPAC is one of the strongest out there. So I don't think that we're going to see anything different from her when it comes to foreign policy. Ukraine will still be vested in Ukraine, spending billions of dollars into Ukraine under her. The domestic policy, she will be a champion for abortion rights. She will be a champion for LGBT rights. She'll be a champion for all of those type of social, like cultural issues. But I don't think that if anybody is expecting a change, and it's so unfortunate because we don't even know what her economic worldview is. Like she hasn't, I'm just sitting here thinking about it like, wow, she hasn't had to talk about an economic worldview. She hasn't started to talk about a foreign policy worldview. All of these things just are assumed because people were so dissatisfied with Joe Biden. It was just anybody else but her. And what's so, I was giving an interview the other day, and sometimes they try to hem you up, but I come with some numbers, and the producer reached out. She was like, wow, she said, we didn't even catch that. So there was a poll because there's not much polling on Kamala Harris, but there was a poll in June. It was a Political Morning Consult poll in June of just this year, where 62% of independents said that Kamala Harris cannot beat Donald Trump in an election. 51% of independents said that Kamala Harris should not be. 34% of independents thought that Kamala Harris should not be vice president, and 51% of independents did not want her to become president of the United States. So those numbers may actually change. But right now, she is having a honeymoon, and she will continue to have that honeymoon, and she won't have to answer for anything, because even as you're saying now, Black men, don't fail us this time. Black men need to make sure you go out and support Donald Trump. There'll be a lot of Kamala Harris. There'll be a lot of attention paid on Black men and how Black men are voting. But honestly, as the founder and CEO, remaining CEO of the original abomination, as I always like to call it, Kamala Harris is not Barack Obama. And the Democrats are doing themselves a disservice trying to create this Obama coalition, this Obama moment all over again. That ain't gonna happen with Kamala, because as soon as she actually starts talking, because everything that she's done now is absolutely scripted. And I get it. Play to your strengths. Everything that she's doing is scripted, which is why you see her on teleprompter even her jokes are on teleprompter each and every time. If she has to go off script, meaning ask questions, that's when I think we'll get a better sense of the numbers, because those numbers may then change. But right now she's having a good moment. But when you don't have to ask for anything, when you didn't have to work for it, and it fell in your lap, you didn't get a single vote, why not just ride it out?
Why not just write it out? Look, we're gonna return. I got one more question. Sad but true. It'll just continue. The more things change, the more things stay the same. So yeah. Vote though. Vote. I'm not saying no vote. I'm just saying be smart about it. After a quick word, our sponsors will be back. Unfortunately, every day is not a day of spring. Life is filled with toxic temptations designed to entice you, to destroy you, to manipulate you, to poison you, to harm you, to cancel you, and to make you sick. But at CVMK, we've designed supplements so that you can fight back. You can be who you were destined to be. You can unleash the hero within with our signature supplement line. Go to www.cvmkglobal.store. Y'all, www.cvmkglobal.store, where it goes down. All right. So nothing's going to change. And honestly, I think that if Trump were to get elected, I think economically it would get better. But there's not going to be this, look, when you're a president, there's so many levels, so many things you have to juggle. It's not like you can overhaul the system, obviously, but let me ask this as my last question. And this is really for both. We talked about that gatekeeping, no side has a bench of talent. They might have one or two. I think Westmore is a potential standout. He's in his first term. We'll see. I think on the right, you have the problem. You have like a Senator Scott, right? That really has the credentials and the acumen to do it. You have some, but there really isn't a depth of talent, right? There's like this vacuum. When are we going to create the next generation of leaders? And I know that's pretty vague, but I'll leave it at that, because honestly, like, it's sad that even before Biden dropped out, I said we have a choice between two 80-year-old men. And I respect the heck out of Vice President Harris. But she's in her 60s. Like we want to talk like she's so much younger. Like, no, she'll be at retirement age by the end of the first term if she got elected. Like, no, she's not. So and Walt is older than she. So where or how can we develop a talent, a roster of talent for future generations?
Well, I think what organizations that are out there getting people to run for office, because a lot of people, they look at the big lights first and try to go into Congress, but you really have to start at your local level. Most of the policies, and you asked a question about you sort of asked about what should we expect under a Donald Trump, and I'll say Kamala Harris. I think it'll be a continuation of what the government actually does. Those tax cuts, the big tax cuts that many people complained about with Donald Trump, the tax cuts for the rich. Well, next year, those tax cuts are expected to expire. As part of those tax cuts, there was a $1,000 tax credit, a child and family tax credit that will expire if it's not renewed. More than likely, especially if it's a Kamala Harris, she will. Congress will extend at least 85% of those tax cuts. So whether it's, yes, on an economic front, Republicans have a different view when it comes to the economy, and the economy was doing better under Donald Trump for a time. But I think that there are things that people are going to want as far as business regulations. Some people want business deregulations, but there will be a continuation of government. Almost everything that impacts us on a daily basis happens at the local level. So while we pay a lot of attention to what's happening at the presidential level, very little that the federal government does can impact us directly. Up the street from me, there's my local school. 28% of the elementary school here, 28% of the kids are proficient in reading and math. Of those, 8% are proficient in reading. That has nothing to do with the federal government. And obviously, I'm in Washington, D.C., so this is a very blue city. But those things impact us. The crime, that's not federal. That impacts us locally. Your property taxes, all of these things impact us locally. And so till we start becoming more engaged and challenging in areas where these safe spaces, where we're challenging our longtime Democratic politicians to address these issues that we've said the federal government is supposed to take care of. No, it's not the federal government's fault. It's not Biden's fault that This school up the street from me, 28% of those babies are proficient in reading and math. That has nothing to do with Joe Biden or even a Donald Trump for that matter. We have to get involved at the local level and then build that capacity up.
That's it. Get involved at the local level, because we got 72% of failing rate at that clip. And like you said, it really starts locally. And if you can't get in your neighborhood, I don't need to see you, marching across states. You're not even taking care of home base, man. And you know how you get involved locally? You support local businesses like mine, www.cvmkglobal.store. Because you know me, I tell people all the time, like, look, you don't know the CEO of Nike. Yeah, you got to be a major athlete to have that type of plug. I'll hire you. You gotta, go to LinkedIn. But that's how you get involved locally. Melik, it's been a pleasure, man. Where can they connect with you?
You can find me melikabdul.com. That's MELIK Abdul.com. Melik Abdul _ on Twitter and Instagram and TikTok.
Y'all connect with him. Go to the website. Follow him on TikTok. Follow him on Twitter. Follow him on the gram. Hit him up. Let him know, hey, look, we need you on CNN. We need you to argue against. And I just want to see the showdown between you and this Joy Reid. And I like Joy. I do want to see a showdown with Joy. I do want to see it. I do want to see how she be going out Larry out. I want to see it. No. But y'all go connect with them. And this is what you do, man. You want to keep seeing amazing people like we have on today. YouTube, 4 letters, 1 word, CVMK. It's on everywhere. It's Spotify. It's on all your podcasts. Where you listen to, it's there. The CVMK Show, it is what it is. Instagram, it is what it is, _show. Supplement, CVMK _global. www.cvmkglobal.store. And until next time, guys, thanks.
If you think exercise alone got me looking like this, well, think again. CVMK Global Super Thick got me right. I'm obsessed, and yeah, I won't stop talking about it because it helped me grow in all the right places. Its creatine provides a fast and reliable way to increase your power, size, and shape, and it's scientifically proven to help you reach your physical goals in a safe, controlled manner. So if you want to increase muscle size, pump, and thickness in your muscle groups, you need Super Thick.